Good to look across my screen and see everyone here today on this fourth day of Hanukkah and getting ready for, of course, the fifth night this evening. So in Jewish tradition, we have many metaphors for light. And as our light grows each night and the increasing the light, I want to focus today on another image for light in our tradition, and that's light as a lifeline. Light as a lifeline. And this I was allowed to dive into this quite deeply. Thank you to IJS and the Clergy Leadership Program when I studied some beautiful texts by our teacher, Lila Helner Eshed. And these texts were written by the Israeli poet Zelda. And so I'd like to actually ask Kat to share the screen right now so that I can kind of share one of her fundamental underlying concepts that can anchor our practice today. So you'll see that this is from an essay written by Zelda. And in this essay, she describes this experience of light. Nothing but that thin beam of light, the Hebrew is kav ha'or, intangible and invisible, traversing the greatest of distances from the soul, beyond the senses, to the creator. This kav ha'or, she says, protects me from the chaos and the void. Tohu vavohu, which is what we read about in the book of Genesis, in the act of creation, right? That this formlessness and this sense of lack of shape and creation is what preceded the creation. So she's making this connection between this protective aspect of this beam of light that's it's like this lifeline to her in her body, where she is from a celestial place, from a holy place, a sacred place. And so this is an amazing metaphor and image for us to think about, to connect Hanukkah to how it is that what anchors us and what gives us a sense of light. And I'll introduce here the word hope, because the word kav, the Hebrew word kav, meaning light here, also is embedded in the Hebrew word for hope. So we can layer that on, that not only is the light a visual line between us and something more ethereal, because I would say, or abstract or powerful, it also can be a line of hope for us also. And so if we scroll down to the next text that relates to this by Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, he is going to drash or expand on the words "I hope" coming from the book of Genesis, another place. And the context of that we're not going to delve into today, but what he does with this phrase is really beautiful and can tie into our sense of light. So he teaches, this is the meaning of the words "I hope" that appear in the book of Genesis, chapter 49. When we say "I hope," we also can relate it to making streams or lines or beams known as kavim. So kavim is the plural form of the word kav that we had in Zelda's essay above. And then he makes this beautiful kind of pivot with this. He says, the one who has hope surely breaks through with his or her or their line of hope. And it makes a hole, it makes an opening, a crack. And this is the sense of "I hope for you." And in this context, Rabbi Luzzatto is saying hope for you as in the divine, right? So we have kav meaning a beam of light. We have kav meaning hope or lines of hope that can anchor us or connect us to something greater. When we hope, we're actually nurturing these beams of light. We can think of this as a as a kavanah, as an intent that we would bring to the act of lighting our Hanukkah candles tonight, that light actually can penetrate something that seems impenetrable, it seems unsolvable, it seems monolithic and difficult. And it makes this hole or this crack of possibility that can let the light in. And so when I was immersing myself once again in this Luzzatto text inspired by Zelda, of course, it made me think of, and if we want to scroll down to the well-known lines of Leonard Cohen's anthem, ring the bells that still can ring, forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. And that's how the light gets in. So I want to have this, share this as a basis for our practice today, reflecting on what is our lifeline, what is our kav ha'or, our beam of light, and if this is available to you, to also explore how that percolates through our bodies. And so I want to do a brief guided meditation and then still allow time for us to have some quiet before we come back together to conclude for the Mourner's Kaddish today. And so I want to invite you to once again take your seat as Mark invited us at the beginning of our session today. If you're seated, to find your sits bones and to ground them either on the chair or the couch. If you're lying down, to feel your back against the surface where you are. And we're going to bring this kav ha'or into our bodies and to let it permeate through kind of every nook and cranny that we can as a preparation for kindling our Hanukkah lights tonight. And thinking about how through this act of our own meditation today, and later through our own lighting, how we're sending out a kav ha'or out into the world, the beam of light, a beam of hope, even at the times when we might feel like we're wondering where that's going to come from. Where is that hope and light going to come from if we're feeling depleted or dispirited or hopeless? But drawing on the strength of each other in this space to access that kav ha'or. So as we breathe together, you can welcome just little sparkles of light down in your toes, wiggling your toes, inviting the warmth of the light, the brightness of the beam of light penetrating all those toes, miraculous toes that allow us to stand, to move, to walk. Feel the warmth radiating up through your metatarsal bones, through the arch in your foot, circling around to the heels and the Achilles tendon. Maybe that beam of light gets a little bit wider as it comes up through the ankles. The shins, the calves, bathing your knees in its warmth, its light, and hope. If you're feeling sensations of pain or discomfort as that light radiates up through the legs, maybe you want to lessen its brightness a little bit. Or maybe you want to let an even broader kav ha'or wash up into the bottom part of your thighs, the back of your knees. Up past those sits bones that ground your body, making it possible for you to sit or to lie with dignity. Let that kav ha'or bathe your entire pelvis in its bright, warm, hopeful light. You may want to touch your belly as that light moves up through the hips, the lower belly, and around to the lower back. Enveloping it in warmth, luminous light. As the light moves up to your ribs, picturing each one of those miraculous ribs as an individual kav ha'or, individual beams of light, supporting, wrapping your torso. Making it possible for your diaphragm to expand and move back again. Supporting that spine, which is its own kav ha'or, its own beam, up to the heart. The sternum radiating the kav out in front of you, out into the world, back into the shoulder blades, and up to the collarbones. And as the kavim, as the beams tumble down your arms, feeling like a warm hug. Into the elbows, forearms, and into the hands that support our work in the world, wiggling your fingers slightly. As now the kav ha'or becomes 10 kavim, all those digits, all those fingers with their minute movements. Holding possibility in the world. And the kav widens up again through the neck, up the back of the spine and into the skull. Releasing the tongue, the lower jaw, the face. Washing through your ears, up over your eyebrows, and into your scalp. our last few minutes of meditation together, you may notice that maybe there's a part of your body that has grown a bit cold, maybe not as connected to this practice, and to bring extra warmth, if you can, to that area, extra sense of hope, possibility. Exploring in our body where we feel the light in the strongest, most present way, how we might bring that with us as we return to our day after this practice. Where is the source of light in our own bodies that we will bring with us? We'll sit for one last minute together. We'll bring us back with a wordless melody and nigun to close our practice. Chag Urim Sameach, may you be blessed with a beautiful and light-filled fifth night of Hanukkah.
Thank you so much, Susan. There was such a beautiful practice and teaching, really beautiful. And friends, we seal the practice as we do each day by offering an opportunity for those of you who are in mourning, or if you're observing a yard site, or if it's your custom to participate in Kaddish, to do so. And if you're not reciting Kaddish, to stay present, help create a minyan of comfort and support for those who are. If you're reciting Kaddish, if you'd like to put the name or names of those you're honoring today in the chat box now, or after we recite Kaddish, that would be lovely. And thanks to Kat Esposito for sharing the words on the screen. If you are reciting the Kaddish, please join me by rising in body or in spirit to recite the words together, and you can unmute. Yitgadal, Yikadash, Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Alma, Dirat, Irute, Yichate, Hayechon, Yomechon, Chaye, B'chol Beit Yisrael, Agalat, B'Zman Karib,
Amen.
Shmei Rabba Nevarach,
Maya,
Yitbarach, Yishtabach, Yishtar, V'Yitramam, Yitzchakar, Yitzhalev, Allah, Elam Yisrael, Ushbechata, V'Nechamata, Amiran,
Amen.
Ishlama Rabban Mishmaya Chaim Aleinu Shalom Bimrama Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'al Israel V'al Kol Yosef
Amen.
Amen.
And friends, thank you so much for joining us today. For those of you who are leaving, we hope you'll join us tomorrow to sit into Shabbat on the 5th day of Hanukkah with Rebecca Schisler as we close out the month of Kislev together before Shabbat and the weekend. Rosh Chodesh Tevet arrives over the weekend as well. So we come to the end of this month. Just a reminder, we will not be meeting live next week. Throughout the week, we'll be back on Tuesday, January 3rd, after with New Year's Day being observed on Monday, January 2nd. We'll be back on Tuesday, January 3rd. And we don't see you until then. Want to wish you blessings for the rest of Hanukkah and a happy and healthy 2023. Hard to believe, 2023. And of course, as always, everyone is invited to stay on for conversation with our teacher for today, Rabbi Susan Leider. Or if you'd like to use this time to stay with your practice and just use this container and this community as an opportunity to hold space for you to continue sitting until we close at 1:15 Eastern Time. If you have a question you'd like to put to Rabbi Susan Leider, please put it in the chat box. As always, I want to thank Kat Esposito for holding our space skillfully, gracefully. And if you have a question for Rabbi Susan Leider, please put it in the chat box. Preface it by writing question, but also feel free, of course, just to share your reflections on the practice today. I really love that, Susan. It was just a beautiful, it was a beautifully constructed teaching too. I don't want to get too heady about it at all, because I really want to stay with that sensation of, you led us through beautifully the guided meditation of kind of feeling that beam of light flowing through. But there's a paradox that struck me in the teaching that I just felt like I wanted to ask you about, really, which is, on the one hand, like you said, the Leonard Cohen line is like at this point, like really well known to people, right? There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. And then there's that Luzzatto teaching, which you shared, which I guess it sort of says that the beam of light actually helps create the crack. In other words, I felt like there was I don't know if it's a contradiction necessarily, but there's like there are multiple layers of meaning to the teaching, which is that the light can fill the cracks, or you invited us to like let the light flow through all the nooks and crannies, right? All the cracks, all the nooks and crannies. And at the same time, it's kind of also making space. And that's where had that sense of hope coming in, right? This sort of like increasing spaciousness in some way. So I don't know, I'm like resolving the apparent contradiction in my own head as I'm talking out loud now. Say, so maybe the light flows through the cracks, but it also kind of expands the cracks and creates more space. I don't know. What do you make of that?
I totally am picking up on that. And I'm realizing that my relation to the Leonard Cohen lines here is that, and people can push back on this if they like, but I think the crack is kind of viewed maybe as a negative thing, right? There's a dichotomy, right? Like the crack is the imperfection. We usually perceive that as being negative, right? And the light's like that positive force that comes in. And so I feel like the Luzzatto is maybe softening those lines of dichotomy a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. And that beam of light is actually a positive. The hole and the fissure is like necessary and inevitable, I guess I would say, as we try to forge or find those beams of light. So I don't know if we're saying the same thing, Mark, but I appreciate you highlighting that.
It's similar. And then also the context for that line, maybe I'll share your text here for a sec.
Sure.
So people can see it. So there's that beautiful Zelda line. People are asking, I saw at least one person asked, how do you find writings by Zelda? Well, there's a lot of editions of translations of really an amazing poet. A lot of editions. So I would just suggest in Google Israeli poet Zelda, and you will find many opportunities. But okay, so we have this kav ha'or, which is just a beautiful phrase, the thin beam of light. Which also kind of reminds me, just playing off this here too, says it's like there's this tradition, and we have this tradition that in the process of creation, that there was this light that stretched to the ends of the universe, right? That then became the hidden light, the Or HaGanuz. And this thin beam of light is like a little, aspect of that primordial light. And it's protective, like Zelda writes, protects me from the chaos and the void, from the tohu vavohu, which is again like a little, not his direct reference to the story of creation. Then the context for the Genesis quote here, I hope, is Jacob at the end of his life. It's a Torah portion coming up in a few weeks. As he's on his deathbed with his, children surrounding him, says this. This is something it just adds a poignancy, I guess, I thought, right? That this, like, expressing hope at the very, very end of life.
Yeah.
Not sure what to make of that either. One who has hope surely breaks through with her line of hope, and making a hole a crack. Gee, I don't know. I just want to sit with that.
Yeah, it's a big one. And I guess, oh, nice. Someone said the question of could you use ray instead of beam? I certainly think so. And I think in the, going back to Mark, what you're saying about sitting with this moment, but I saw that question pop up. I think that's the interesting thing about bringing this imagery into the body, is that through our body, we can experience the breadth or the width or the narrowness of the light in different ways. Not narrowness in a negative sense, right? But there's just in our bodies, right? Our toes are more narrow than our ankles, and so this word beam is just one possible translation of a kav. A kav could also be a very thin line, like a fish line.
Right.
Bone line, right?
It's literally a line, right? But you pointed out that the same word is has the same Hebrew root as hope. So that just like that alone is worth the price of admission right there. It's just like a beautiful, beautiful connection between those two.
Yeah.
And I guess in English, ray is usually used in association with hope, right? A ray of hope, right?
Yeah, an idiom. Yeah. Or the expression. Yeah, I think the other thing with the Luzzatto, like in the white elephant in the room, is what do we do when we feel hopeless, which we're not going to solve in the last 6 minutes we have together today, right? But how do you access the kav when there isn't even a ray of, right? There's nothing there. And I also think that that's where it's helpful to think about different translations for kav in terms of thickness or thinness, because it gives us an opening that, like, we might only feel like we wake up in the morning and we can't see any thin kav, beam, light, ray, but maybe through our day we can move from nothing to the thin line. And then there are other days where we'll feel more of the broadness and the warmth of the light. But I just think it's important to name that, because otherwise both teachings come across as Pollyannish, right? To assume that it's always accessible.
Right. I just want to connect it back with on Tuesday, Rabbi Sarah Brandis was teaching about light embedded in the darkness, which also was helpful because you can have that sense of, having it not feel accessible, and yet intuiting that it's present even in that place, right? I want to throw in also Ricky Lippitz, who's put in the chat about these discussions, I guess, of light and dark and beams of light. Always remind me of kintsugi, golden joinery, the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery by mending the areas of breakage with powdered gold. Which is also, I guess I was thinking the same thing. And goes with that Leonard Cohen. There's something about embracing the brokenness. And I guess it's really paradox, right? It's sort of a broken, wholeness and brokenness simultaneously, and the gold plays a part, and the beam of light plays a part. Like, what is the hope at the end of life also? It is possible at the moment when it seems hopeless, right, to experience this weird paradoxical sense of hope. So maybe there's a little bit of invitation here to sit with and experience paradoxical truth at the same time, which is maybe a little bit of a hallmark of Hanukkah here.
I should say.
A lot of comments here. Okay.
I also have wondered about kintsugi because I've been exposed briefly to the concept before, but I also wonder if in that art, if the art begins specifically with broken pieces, or if it's really meant to be a reparative thing, right? Because I think that's an interesting thing. Like, do we start broken in the sense of accepting that and not just that the practice or the art is only to fix things that are broken, but is just to say from the outset, we know, and this links back to her, Zelda's reminding us of Breshit, of Genesis, right? That there is going to be tohu vavohu. That's the kind of the chaos of nothingness. And then that's our starting point. It's not that we start out whole and perfect and then, things get broken and, we have to fix that. Yeah. But it's from the outset and kind of an unapologetic approach to brokenness.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And also the for those who are familiar in Kabbalah, the Lurianic story of Kabbalah also is about creation happens through shattering. It's a shattering. In fact, like the beam of light, the myth is God pours the beam of light into these vessels, and the vessels literally are not capable of holding that light. So they shatter. So like you're saying, it's like in both stories, in both kind of mythic stories of creation, brokenness comes with the process. It's not like, oh, darn it, it was whole and now it's broken. It's actually really is about that kind of acceptance of that brokenness. I mean, I don't know about in kintsugi. I don't know, maybe you do. I don't know, maybe somebody here does. My understanding, and I could be wrong, is that the artisan actually breaks the pot. Like, it's not like, I drop the pot, so instead of throwing it out, I'll do kintsugi, right? It's actually that the brokenness is part of the process. You shatter the pottery in order to do that, which is different than, I wish it were whole, but since it's not, I'll do kintsugi.
Right. I was suspecting that was true in the case. I wasn't sure. But yeah, I think that totally then supports this kind of view, right? And making that hole, making that crack, and it's not a mistake. It's not a mistake all the time, right?
And we're not mistakes, right? And we're not mistakes. So that's really very powerful to sit with that. All right, Susan, you want to take us out with another round of that?
Just want to say thank you to everyone, and maybe at the end here, just to circle back to what I said, is that really I would not have been able to share these teachings today without IJS first teaching them to me through the clergy leadership program. So this is just an example of how the study, I first learned these texts, I think it was about 1.5 years ago, Mark, with Malila.
Right. Yeah.
And so, when Hanukkah rolls around and those texts and those teachings are percolating through my body and my soul, and then I can bring them back to share with this community. And that's tremendously gratifying and meaningful to me. So Chag Sameach, everybody.
To you too, Susan. It's really, it was a beautiful teaching. Like you brought up, you just brought it to us very, very beautifully. And the teaching, the meditation, and the silence. I don't know if others found this. You led us into a pretty deep place there. So thank you so much for that.
Thank
All right.
you.
Want to take us out?
Have a wonderful holiday, everyone. Light-filled. Blessings.
Okay, blessings to everyone. Chag Urim Sameach. We'll hope to see you tomorrow to sit into Shabbat together with Rebecca Schisler. Thank you, Kat, and thanks to each of you for being here. Blessings, everyone.